welcome to this episode of Women Unhindered. I'm your host, Courtney Goodwin, and today I am so proud and so honored to introduce my friend, Betty Campbell. She's the executive director of an organization that reaches out to members of the adult entertainment industry. And I actually met Betty several years ago when I was feeling a call and a pull to strip club ministry. And I know we just blew your minds just saying all those things strip club ministry, adult entertainment industry. But you know what? Jesus left the 99 to go after the one. And that's one of the things I love about Xpose Hope, which is Betty's ministry, is she tirelessly leaves the 99 to go after the one, to meet them where they're at, to love on them exactly where they're at as they are, and to just give them the love of God in such a practical way. And so, Betty, I am so thrilled and honored to have you. Welcome to the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Courtney. It's wonderful to be here.
You guys are in for such a treat because Betty is a powerhouse. This woman has an incredible, powerful testimony. And she also, just as I said, she is out here doing the things. A lot of Christians talk about reaching out to the lost. Betty's actually doing it. And she's not waiting for people to come to church. She's not waiting for them to clean themselves up first, but she's going right to them. She's going right to them, right where they are. She's saying, I see you just as you are, and I love you right where you are. And by the way, so does Jesus.
Exactly.
And like I said, I had the privilege of serving with her for probably a year or so, going out on strip club outreaches every
Mhm.
month in the city of Portland, where I come from. And wow, what an adventure! What an adventure! No two outreaches were ever alike. But
Nope.
man, I experienced the love and the presence of God even in some of the darkest places. And it was powerful. So, I was telling Betty earlier that when I meet someone like Betty, who has this incredible ministry, she serves, like I said, with so much energy and just so much commitment and devotion. Um, I always kind of wonder, where did they come from? How did they get to be the way that they are? She didn't come out of the womb, with this amazing
No.
nonprofit organization. She didn't come out, already just this mature believer in love with Jesus, et cetera, et cetera. And so my interest is always in the story. So, Betty, I know you've written a book. I've read your book. It's a powerful testimony. Would you please just tell us about yourself, where you come from? Just talk about some of your journey with Jesus throughout the years, kind of that brings you to this moment.
Well, I was born in Columbus, Ohio. Go Buckeyes! Um, we are a state of very middle American people who have family values. Um, was raised with those. We are hardworking, um, and I was born in Columbus, and pretty soon after that, we moved out to a little teeny burg called Pickerington, and it was a farming community. I think my dad was the only non-farmer there. It kind of felt out of place. Uh, we were, he was a mailman in Columbus, Ohio, but um, we moved out there. Got a little bit of land, just a couple of acres, in an area with lots of horses and cows and pigs and things like that. Grew up in what today most people would consider an idyllic area, idyllic situation. Um, my families were very, very tight on both my mom's and my dad's side. They had both come through the Depression, so they maintained those bonds with their brothers and sisters. Um, when I was 9 years old, though, when I was 7 years old, I was in school one day, just first grade, having a great time, being a kid, and I heard about a basketball game one of my classmates was going to be in the Queen's court for this basketball game. And I went home and said to my parents, I want to go. I got to see my friend be on stage as a queen. And so my father said he would take me and he would make sure that I could be there. My brother was in high school at the time, and he was the manager for the basketball team, which meant he made sure everything was there for the players. He made sure that the stand was running, that had the popcorn and the sodas and the things like that. And I went, I saw her, saw the actual queen of the prom crowned. And then my father came to get me. Well, when he came to get me right after that, my brother noticed they were out of popcorn, and he got in a car, which was absolutely forbidden by my family. We were never allowed to get in the car with any teenage driver, and because they were going only a couple of blocks away to Kelly's Market to get some popcorn.
Mm.
And unfortunately, when they left, there was a train coming. They didn't see the train. It was dark. It did not have its lights. It came around a dark bend, and it crumpled the car, just absolutely destroyed the car. My brother actually died of shock. He didn't have any actual injuries except a broken nose, but he died of shock.
Wow.
The driver died, but the kid that was pinned in the middle lived, went through years of therapy. Well, this affected obviously my family. Somebody who had been in my family and was part of me was gone. And it was only a couple of years later, when I was 9, my mother was quite ill at that time. She had emphysema. And she, one day, I went down to have breakfast in the morning. I was in 4th grade, and I was 9 years old, and I loved to beat my brother downstairs. I wanted to be the one to choose the cereal for the morning. And ran downstairs, ran down to kiss my mom, because she at this point was in a hospital bed, so that she could elevate up so she could breathe better. And went to kiss her goodbye, and she was cold. Still affects me
Yeah.
50 years
So
later.
much trauma and grief and pain as such a young one. Only 9. Wow.
So that started a new period of my life, because your parents are permanent. Your parents are always there, right? Um, and then suddenly she wasn't. And my dad was an amazing dad, but he was not a mom. And it was difficult for him being a single dad. And especially the two of us were girls. This wasn't, he never thought he'd be raising girls and having to go pick out bras and be there for first dates and tell me what to wear. And so it was a really difficult transition. Um, the worst part of it was I was the only one. See, in today's world, if that happened to you, every other kid at school has a single parent, or a broken home, or maybe they're living with grandma, and that's normal. And kids don't look on it so weird. But back then, I was the odd one. I was the odd duck out. And I was always very short anyway, very small, and didn't really fit. I wasn't a farmer's kid, didn't really grow up with all the kids, wasn't born there, was born somewhere else. And so I was just kind of on the outside. Now, as my little town started to grow, a different type of person came in, and these people were, I had a friend whose mother was an interior designer, and I had friends whose dads were architects suddenly, and they were much higher end than my father, because he was a mailman, and he was much older than me. My father, when I was born, I think was 35, um, because they went through several miscarriages before they had kids, and then there was a 7-year distance between my sister and me. So I was a late child. This left me feeling, again, different, left out, not the one that you would choose to be on your volleyball team, right? Um, and so I always had this place that I just felt I was missing. I wasn't right. I didn't fit. I was a round peg in a square hole, or a square peg in a round hole. Um, and so I didn't really date a lot in early high school. All my friends were dating. I just couldn't find a date. I was the one that everybody knew, but nobody wanted to date. And so I felt really left out. I did date a little bit through my church camp, and met some young men down there, and that was great. But I when I was young, we were Catholic. We grew up Catholic, and I had my first communion, all of those wonderful, beautiful things. But when my mother died, there was an incident at the funeral home with some nuns, and my father swore he'd never go back. So, so that we could have church, he would send me in and my brother into my aunt's church in Columbus. And it was through that church at a little camp called Stoutsville that I met Jesus Christ at an altar.
Hey friends, I just have to interrupt the show for a quick second to tell you about the ministry behind it. Unhindered Ministries is a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization that exists to bring hope-filled, faith-focused media to women by sharing real stories and testimonies of answered prayers and transformed lives. It costs money every month to produce this podcast, but your tax-deductible gifts of any amount to Unhindered Ministries would be so appreciated to help us continue bringing this kind of content your way. Will you consider giving a one-time financial gift or even committing to a monthly donation to support the podcast? For more information or to make a donation, please go to unhinderedministries.net. It also helps our ministry if you follow the podcast, like, and subscribe in all the ways. Thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting Women Unhindered.
I met Christ there, and that totally rocked my world. I became 100% Jesus girl. Finally, I fit. I belong somewhere. I was somebody to someone, right? This is awesome when you're 14, 15, 16. And I absolutely love the Lord. I started a Bible study. Uh, there were there was a person at my school who's now a pastor, who's really well known, who was in it. Uh, we just did all kinds of amazing things for Jesus. We knocked on doors. We were so evangelical as teenagers. We even studied Revelations. It was an amazing time of life. So then I was about 16, 17, and I felt this call one time at church camp. I truly felt I was being called into ministry. And I wrote the date in my Bible. And John Maxwell was actually the speaker that day. And I asked him to sign my Bible right where I had written it, and said, I've been called in. What we called it back then was I was called to preach. Little did I know, no, I was called to ministry. Um, and I went to see the pastor, and a lot of us students lined up to ask for the church's blessing so we could go to Bible college, because that's what was required of that particular version of church. And I watched people go in who I knew had serious sin in their life. And on top of which, my aunt at the time was the chair of the board of the church. And so I thought, someone would go in and they would come out and they would say, yes, I'm going to Bible college. And if he made it, no problem. I had no fear at all. I knew I was going to walk in there and the pastor was going to say, well, I've just been waiting for you to come tell me. I knew God was calling you. Obviously, Betty, you belong in ministry. But unfortunately, he waited until the very end to take me in. And when I got in there, he said, Betty Lou, you've heard this call all wrong. See, he's probably called you to be a pastor's wife. He's not called you to be a pastor, because women can never be in ministry. And I was shocked. That old fear of I don't fit, I don't belong, came right back. I walked outside. Two of my friends were there. I told them what happened. I said, let's go get some beer and marijuana. And we did. And it was the first time I'd ever had it, the marijuana, and it was not a good time. I walked into my youth pastor's house that night for a youth thing. um, fell down the stairs, literally fell down his basement stairs because I was so out of it.
Mhm.
And I looked up to see him looking at me saying, "You get out of here and don't come back until you are sober again."
Wow.
So I got up and I left. My friends got in the car with me. And as I pulled out, I heard a terrible noise. And I thought, "Oh, my car is having a problem." And I sped off and I was so mad. And we went to my friend's house and I said, "Wow, that noise was terrible. I wonder what's going on with my car." And my friend said, "You hit a police car." You did hit and run on a police
Oh,
car.
no.
Now, I'm 17 years old. So in one night, I basically threw it all away and just started down a dark path. And from there, I quit going to church. I quit talking to my aunt and uncle, I was very close to. Um, I just walked away. And I started dating anyone that would date me. Um, a gentleman came into my life that I later married. Very young, I had turned I we did the wedding 3 days after my 18th birthday because my father, I didn't think, would acquiesce. So, the wedding was 3 days after my 18th birthday, but we were living together when I was 17. And he kept telling me about his girlfriend he had had, and she was Miss Nude Florida, and she bought him all kinds of things, motorcycle, condo on the beach, and he was like, "We could have it so much better, if you were in that life." And I asked, "What life? How do you get to be how am I going to be Miss Nude Florida? I don't even live in Florida." And he said, "Miss Nude Ohio, you could run for that. All you have to do is be a stripper." And he wouldn't let it go. Every time that, things got down, we didn't have enough money, he'd say, "Wow, I really miss the days when my girlfriend would take care of me. I really miss those days." And so I thought I was losing my husband. And in my family, marriage is forever. My mother died, um, loving my dad. So I didn't know anything else. So I felt that if he left, I was done. My life was over. So I started thinking about it. I was working for the state of Ohio, which I look back now and think, what a fool, 17 years old, knowing everything. Uh, but clearly didn't know enough. I could have retired with a very nice pension out of that job. And I started looking for, like, are there ways I can make a little extra money that'll help? A little extra money. So I going through the one ads one day, and there was an ad for a strip club, and they were looking for somebody in the back office and somebody to be hostess and another person to be a waitress. And I thought I could do all three of those things. I was trained to be an office person. I took high school steno in high school. I can absolutely do all three of those. So I went down there and thought, if I can get a job there, it'll make great money. He'll be happy. Well, I walked in, I do the interview. The guy says, "Oh, I already hired a bookkeeper." And I have to ask you, "Why do you want to be a waitress?" And I said, "Well, because I think I can do it. I'm good with, I think I'd be good with customers." And he said, "Well, they don't make that much, but our dancers make a whole lot." And I kind of laughed. Yeah, that's not me. And he said, "Really? Because you could audition today. And there's hardly anybody here. And it's not hard. And if you never want to do it again, I wouldn't blame you. It'd be okay. And we'll just make you a waitress, but you'll make a lot more money." And I said, "How much more?" And he said, "Substantially." So I got my guts up and I got on stage and I took off all my clothes and I danced. And he had seated money in the crowd, and I made like $600, which to me was $1 million back then. In like 10 minutes, I made this money. And I thought, "Oh, this is the life for me." And it just did not end up like I thought it was going to. Just dance and then be nice to people, and you'll make $600 every night. Um, it was not that way at all. I often made very little. By the time I paid my stage fees, I paid for my drinks, I paid for the things that I needed to. Sometimes I owed them money. and I had worked all night.
Wow.
Um, and so they started telling me about these parties that there were that I could go to. And some of them were in Las Vegas and I could be flown there. And I could have make a lot more money. And so as you can see, it just begins to spiral down and spiral down. We would need money for a car payment. So I would do, I would go into a back room. I would, need a little money for something else. I would go to a party. And it just escalated and escalated. Now, I never saw hardly any of this money. The only money spent on me was for costumes. Nothing else was spent on me. But my husband had some beautiful jewelry out of it. We got a new car. We did so much with that money. Um, and I was only removed from the situation because a friend of mine ended up having hepatitis. And I stood up for her, and the owner of the club threatened both of our lives.
What's on your heart today, Lord? I roused myself out of my typical self-centered prayers to ask God in my quiet time one day. I heard the Holy Spirit speak gently to my heart. My heart is hurting for the ones who need love. They need to know there's a purpose for their life, and I have not forgotten them. Will you tell them that I'm proud of how I made them? Will you call out their God-given identity? Will you bring clarity where there's been confusion? I knew immediately he was referring to those struggling with their sexuality and gender. I could feel his broken heart. Then God began to show me how I could pray Psalm 13 over those with identity confusion. It's powerful to declare in prayer who someone is rather than what they are not. He led me to write out a simple 5-day prayer strategy based on the 5 verses in Psalm 13 that I could pray for anyone in my life struggling with confusion about their identity or gender. I'd love to share it with you as a free gift. Each day of this prayer strategy gives powerful, true design statements to declare over someone in your life who struggles with gender or identity confusion. There is also a prayer each day with blanks for you to fill in the name of a loved one and pray out loud for them. It's easy, it's simple, and you can return to these prayers as many times as you'd like. If you'd like a free copy of this prayer strategy, go to my website at unhinderedministries.net and get a copy sent straight to your inbox. Praying God's Word is our most powerful tool for freedom and transformation.
So we had to move on base because my husband was in the military to get just for safety. So there is, there's no good in the industry. Um, when I was in the industry, I would have told you, oh, there's so much good in the industry. I love it. I make more than you do in 20 minutes. And I would have told you all of those things. They weren't true. So we went to Florida. The Air Force moved us down to Florida. And I thought we had changed my lifestyle. I had gotten pregnant. I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. I was selling Avon on the side. It was all this beautiful little picket fence that I had always dreamed of, right? Um, however, my husband was working a lot of hours. I mean, a lot of hours for somebody of his rank. And I just figured that was part of coming back into the service, and because we had gotten out for a small stint and he was having to work his way back up. But the night that I went into labor, um, I found that I called his boss and said, "Hey, I need him home because I'm in labor." And he said, "Well, why would I know where he is?" And I said, "Because he's working late tonight." And we didn't have cell phones in that day, right? And so he said, "Well, he's not working for me." I said, "He hasn't been working late?" And he said, "No." He said, "He goes to the NCO club after work." So he sent someone to the NCO club to get my husband because there were dancers there and he was there watching the dancers. So we went to the hospital. I had my baby, and the anger within me, the the need for retribution, the need again to not feel like a square peg in a round hole. 3 weeks later, I was on stage with my daughter in a car seat behind the stage dancing at that club. I thought, I'll teach you because I will dance there.
Wow.
And that, of course, spiraled again. Um, And so my life was just a living nightmare. My husband was abusive. Um, he he caused me harm, and I always thought this is what I get for not thinking when I was young, for not doing, I have to do what I need to do to keep the marriage together. That's what you do, right? We baptized my daughter Catholic on base. Um, and shortly thereafter, I was pregnant again. And then he began to beat my daughter, my oldest daughter. And one day he beat her so badly, they thought that he had ruptured her kidney. So he was taken out of the home. CPS was brought in. Um, and my life just kind of turned upside down. I realized then that I had to get out. I just didn't know how to do it. How do you go home when you've been what I've been? I couldn't go home that way. So I started trying to figure out how I could do that. So I started a couple of small businesses trying to get enough money. And nothing was enough to actually move out on my own because by this time we were in Vegas. It was a very high income place. I couldn't afford an apartment. And I was just flabbergasted with like myself. what, it, I, what mess I have made of my life. Um, One night he attempted to kill me. The security police came and said, "You've got to go." So during that time period, um, one of my side things was I was running a BVS, which was the pre-internet, and a friend of mine from there said, "Let me come get you and get you in a hotel room and let me get you safe." And so he did. We became very close friends. He helped me get a job. He helped me get a car, and then um, pretty soon we moved in together. I divorced my husband, and Lane had become like everything to me. He was an amazing man. He was a good person. First time in my life, I had someone in my life who loved me because of who I was, not because of what I look like, not because of where I've been. We had three more children, and I thought my life was perfect. Sometimes you think you are, and I love to tell women this at women's events. You think you're where God put you. Here I am. I've arrived. I did it. I got out of that, and I'm here, and I have a house, and I have children, and I have a life, and I can be proud of my life. And you think that's all God has for you. And not that my children and my house and my husband weren't amazing, but He way was calling me to more. And we had three more children, so we had a total of five children. I was working. I was a fashion editor. I was in New York all the time, searching for fashions. I did fashion trade shows. I watched runway models. I did all the shoots for three magazines. Um, had an amazing career going. We were making so much money. I I would go to the mailbox, and for the first time in our lives, there was more checks than there were bills, and there were a ton of checks. So it was great. My husband was working. He had become vice president of his company. We were doing amazing. And then 9/11 happened. Um, and I had been in the buildings about 2 weeks before. I had eaten at Windows on the World restaurant. We were there with a fashion model search. And I watched this building that was the most intense building I've ever seen. I mean, you walk through the circulating doors and they're about that wide. Well, their circulating doors, the fins were this wide. Everything on this building was massive, and I watched them fall to dust. And I thought, my first thought was, I remember what my youth pastor taught me about Revelations, and the end is coming, and I am not ready. And this is all I've got. I've got kids and a husband, but I haven't done a thing. And I was so upset with it that I actually asked Lane for a divorce because I wanted to move home and I wanted to start all over and do whatever God asked me and da da da. And he had talked to me about God during that time. He was like, "Well, why don't we go back to church?" And I said, "No, no, no, no. You don't know what I'm like at church. You wouldn't like me. I'm like 100% soul. You would not like me. What? During that time, someone invited him to Promise Keepers, and he met the Lord. And it changed our marriage, and it saved our marriage and changed our lives. And so again, I'm thinking, wow, this is it. This is what we're supposed to be doing. I have a husband who's saved. I'm saved. We're doing ministry. We were doing youth ministry. It was awesome. And then Lane began to have trouble swallowing, and we found that he had esophageal cancer. And in only 2 years, he went from healthy to meeting Jesus. And so again, I'm upside down. I'm like, why would you take such an amazing man, God? He spoke at the Promise Keepers event for their largest donors because of his amazing story of Promise Keepers. We were doing huge ministry. He was taking hundreds of men to Promise Keepers every year. And you take him from us and you leave me with 3 boys? I don't know anything about raising boys. I wasn't a boy when I was young, and I reckon back to when my father had to raise me. So, long story short, I ended up in Oregon. Um, and the Lord called me into this ministry. And then I realized that it had been 40 years since I was called into ministry. So 40 years I was in a desert, and God still was calling me. He hadn't changed it at all. We changed, but he never changes his mind. And he knew where I was going to be, and he had only asked me to prepare myself for that. And I wish I would have listened at the time and gone to Bible college, just done it on my own. But no, I took my hurts and I went out into the world with them.
Hey friends, I just have to interrupt the show for a quick second to tell you about the ministry behind it. Unhindered Ministries is a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization that exists to bring hope-filled, faith-focused media to women by sharing real stories and testimonies of answered prayers and transformed lives. It costs money every month to produce this podcast, but your tax-deductible gifts of any amount to Unhindered Ministries would be so appreciated to help us continue bringing this kind of content your way. Will you consider giving a one-time financial gift or even committing to a monthly donation to support the podcast? For more information or to make a donation, please go to unhinderedministries.net. It also helps our ministry if you follow the podcast, like, and subscribe in all the ways. Thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting Women Unhindered.
So, started this ministry with just 3 women, my pastor's wife, and a woman who sat behind me, who had sat behind me 2 years in church and never spoken a word to me. We would shake hands when we were introducing, when he said to introduce yourself to someone around you, and I never heard her voice. And she was so quiet. The 3 of us, a pastor's wife who's never been in a bar, much less a strip club, me and her, went out together and began this ministry, thinking it's going to be a once a month thing. It'll be just a little bit of time. I was going to donate all the gifts from my little business. No problem at all. And within months, it began to explode. We ended up with more team members. We ended up in more clubs. We were getting calls day and night. I had to sell my business because I couldn't do business and do this because of the number of women we were helping. So you never know, what God is going to do. And when he calls you, if he whispered to you when you were 14, he's still whispering.
Well, your story is so powerful, Betty, and I want to ask even more questions. But first, I wanted to note, going back to when you were told, you got this wrong, you got this call wrong. You're probably a pastor's wife. You're not meant to be a pastor yourself, all of that. I don't think a lot of older Christians realize how important their words are to younger people that are sensing a call of God. And so I just
Yes.
want to encourage any spiritual mothers and fathers that are watching or listening that we need to be really, really, really careful because, we have so much our words have so much power, and we can speak life into a person, or we can speak death over them. And not that they're fully responsible for all the things that happened, but the wounding that came in, the way that that opened doors to the enemy being able to just kick you while you were down. I just wanted to highlight that we've got to be so careful with our young ones that are excited about Jesus and they're excited about a call. Let's be so careful. Let's be so enthusiastic. Let's be their biggest cheerleaders, because ministry can mean all kinds of things. And yeah, so just wanted to call that out. And then the other thing, Betty, was you went from kind of this lifetime really of feeling ashamed of your background and of the things that you had done and how you'd wandered so far from the Lord. And then all of a sudden you started this ministry. What was the turning point for you? How did God turn that around for you, like mentally and emotionally, Because you went from, like, you hadn't told anyone. I think you'd told your husband maybe.
Yes, both of my husbands knew because I felt it could ever there are always pictures taken of you, so I always felt that could come up, and I didn't want that to come up 20 years into a marriage. So my husband knew, my current husband knew, um, but I had not. My kids didn't know. Okay, my oldest did not know she was in a car seat behind you know, behind the stage. They didn't realize it because by the time they could remember, mom wasn't doing that anymore. So um, I went into I started it, and when people would ask, "Why are you doing this? What called you to this?" I would just say, "I don't know. God just called me." It's an and I still use this term. It is a mission field directly outside your church doors. It's an easy mission field. I require no shots to get on a plane to go. I don't need a hotel room over there. I don't need to learn a new language because I already know the language. And so it's an easy mission field full of millions of women who don't know Jesus, don't understand that he loves them. And that's what I would say. And I would never say because I was one. And in fact, the first time that I spoke publicly and I said, because I was in a situation with a lot of other people, we were all speaking about trafficking, and they were asking, like, how would you know? How would I know a trafficked woman? I mean, what would they look? What do they look like? And I could tell everyone in the audience was assuming no one on the stage could possibly be. And so I said, if you want to know what a trafficked woman looks like, look at me. And immediately everything changed. And I looked in the back and my husband's eyes got giant. I mean, he knew, about my life, but he had never heard me refer to myself as trafficked. It was the first time I ever had. But, when someone else makes money off of you to do sexual things, that is trafficking. And so every act that I did, the money went to my husband's pocket. So I was trafficked. And later, there were others that got involved, but to actually say that, that was really hard. And when we first started, I put my testimony in an envelope and I would give it to one woman a week. And when we went out, and my pastor said, "That's an amazing idea. I'd like for you to get up and tell your testimony in front of the church." And I said, "Oh, I could never," because I knew they would look on me different. And that's the thing. Every time I speak in a church, because I'm part of Celebrate Recovery and I give my testimony, or I speak it in a women's event or a church event, um, I have women and men who come up to me and say, they're my age. I've never told anyone. I couldn't tell anyone. That's not okay.
Yeah.
We have so hidden and so ostracized people in the industry. And the thing is, they are being used and abused. It's abuse. We would never have looked at a slave during slave times who was in chains working on a in a field and say, "Ah, they should be ashamed of that." But we look on these people and say, "You should have shame." But in reality, they are in chains. They are not real change. They are mental change, but they are chained nonetheless. So there should be no embarrassment for people to say, "I am in this industry." And I'm working now. Our Celebrate Recovery just started a group for women who are trafficked or have been trafficked so that women can have a place to heal from these hurts. It's important. We have to, as ministries, start embracing the fact that there are a lot of when you look at the millions that have been trafficked, they are going to come to Jesus at some point, and we have to welcome them because that's what Jesus did. The woman who was pouring the oil and the perfume on Jesus and washing it with her hair, that was an extra service in those days of prostitution. So that was a prostitute. He didn't say to her, "You should be ashamed of yourself." Instead, he said, "This woman who has washed my feet when you didn't wash my feet when I came in, this woman has been kissing my feet, but you didn't give me a kiss on the cheek when I came in." That's what Jesus did. So that's what we need to do, and to everybody. You look at Portland, where you come from, you look at the addicts in the streets. They can't stand up, they're bent over, they aren't themselves. Jesus wouldn't tell them, "You should be ashamed of yourself." He would say, "Come to me. I have a my burden is less. My yoke is light." That's what he would say.
Well, amen to that. And I feel like, we might have people watching right now who are being reminded of their past. They're being reminded right now of the things in their past that they're ashamed of. Perhaps they've been trafficked, or perhaps this or that. And I feel like shame is just such a common tool of the devil to just kick us over and over again while we're down, and to try to keep us from understanding the fullness and the freedom that Jesus died and paid for all of us. And so I love the fact that you kicked shame in the face and you just said, "Listen, this is part of my story." And then to see the redemption of God, to take you, because I feel like, there's so much power in the fact that you've been there. You know what these women are experiencing right now because you've lived it, you've walked it. And the way that God in his wisdom, you know, placed that call on your life and then showed you such a unique way to walk it out, it's drawing people into freedom. And there's a power to it because you can say, "I've been in your shoes." And it's just if you had stayed in shame and stayed in the secrecy and the hiddenness of your past, believing the lies of the accuser, countless women right now and men wouldn't be experiencing the fruit of your labors and the fruit of your courage and your bravery and your obedience. Because you have women that have walked out of trafficking. You have women that you have rescued from dangerous situations. You have even male strippers, right, that the ministry is reaching out to and loving on. And, there are people coming to Jesus because you were willing to say, "This is where I've been. Sure, but this doesn't define how God sees me. And I want to come and I want to bring you into the fold too. I want to leave the 99 to go after the one and just bring you in." And so I think there's so much that's powerful about your testimony, Betty. But the thing that I just feel like God's highlighting right now is not only the beauty from ashes, but just that victory over shame. And so I was wondering if you could just say a quick prayer for people who are listening that are being constantly reminded by the accuser of their past, and they're feeling like God can't use me. If other Christians knew what I was really like, they would reject me. They wouldn't love me. There's no place for me in the body of Christ because of what I've done. Um, would you just pray over those people that are hearing those things and believing those lies?
I would absolutely love to. Father, we come to you today, and Lord, we know there are men and women out there who, in their past, they did something they hope never finds its way back into society. That they hope those pictures are burned, or the person who knew about it has died, that those things are gone forever, and they're just praying it because they're ashamed. But Father, you can use everything in our lives. The things that shame us the most give you the most glory. Father, and you knew what we were going to do from the day we were born. You knew that we would be on the stage, or you knew that we would have that affair, or you knew that we would take that money we shouldn't take. You knew that we would ostracize that other person in high school. You knew that we were going to do these things. And in your power, you fixed it all on the cross for us. You reached out your arms and said, it's done, it's finished. So, Father, I pray over each and every one of your children who feels that their shame is keeping them from doing what you've called them to do. Maybe it's write a book. Maybe it's go to China with Bibles. Maybe it's feed the homeless. Maybe it's talk to the elderly person next door. Maybe it's sing a solo at church. But Father, whatever it is, they're not doing it because they feel they can never really be forgiven. That if everyone knew, they would not want anything to do with them. But Father, you're the hero of the square peg. You lift us up. It is your light. It is your strength. It's not in what we've done. Even if we had a perfect past, we would not be good enough to reach up to you. So, Father, you put us all on a level playing field. For all have sinned and fallen short, and you have lifted us all back up. Father, I pray into the lives of these people that they would understand, that my sisters and brothers would know that there is no shame in you. There is no condemnation in you. And that others who may feel that way just don't understand. Father, just open doors for every one of your believers who is breaking up chains of shame, of guilt, of their past, so that they can use those things to bring someone else to you. Because, Lord, our whole goal in life should be that when we meet you, we bring a basket of souls with us. So, Father, fill their baskets, fill them full, using those things that they were ashamed of, fill their basket with souls. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, our mighty Redeemer. Amen.
Whew, that was powerful, Betty. Oh,
You didn't
thank
say bring tissues to this, so I
you.
didn't, but clearly I should have.
Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story. And I just know that people are blessed hearing you and listening to your story and then just receiving that prayer. The people that listened to that prayer and that received it and that believed it, they've stepped into some serious freedom today. I'm believing maybe in a new way or in a new level at a new level than they haven't before. So I just can't thank you enough for being here and sharing your story. And I did want to tell people that you have written your testimony in a book, and I
Mhm.
usually like to have the physical book with me, but I did the Kindle version this time. So it's My Journey in His Hands. And I will put links with this episode so that people know how to purchase it. Um, but And it's a great evangelism tool. I know, Betty, that you wrote it with
Mhm.
like your dancers in mind, right?
Yes. Our goal is to get that book into as many girls' hands as possible.
Betty, thank you so much for being here. And everybody, please tune in for the next episode because we are going to dig into the exciting work that Xpose Hope is doing, and you are not going to want to miss it. So, thank you so much, Betty, for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blessing.
Thanks for joining me for today's episode of Women Unhindered. I pray that you were encouraged and inspired. If our show blessed you in any way, would you please consider donating any amount on our website, unhinderedministries.net. Your financial gifts help make this show possible, and we can't wait to bring more quality content your way. As always, please like, follow, and subscribe to keep Women Unhindered coming your way. Thanks again for joining.